This episode touches on topics that may be sensitive for some listeners. Welcome to Mom in Mind, a podcast about maternal mental health discussing conception, pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. Real stories from moms and family members who have made it from struggling to wellness, and interviews with experts and advocates who work for moms and families to get the help they need. This podcast is meant to offer information and awareness and is not a replacement for treatment by a professional or professional training. Welcome back to Mom in Mind. I'm your host, Dr. Kat. On this episode, I'm talking with Diana Collins. We're going to learn about her personal story, losing her friend to postpartum suicide, and how she's working to spread awareness. Diana is a mom of 2 beautiful girls and has been married to her best friend of 4 years. 2 under 2 is tough, but never boring. She loves spending time with her little family, crafting, and reading. She recently quit her day job to accomplish a mission in spreading postpartum depression and suicide awareness by sharing other mothers' stories on her podcast called Always With Me. Although she's experienced a tragedy, she has found joy and never been happier. Life is so short and we must choose to live every single day, she says. Well, welcome, Diana. Thanks for coming on.
Yes, thanks for having me, and thanks for the great intro.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really glad to talk with you, and I think it's important for people to hear these kinds of stories.
Yes.
Not only your story, but your experience with your friend and the impact that it's had and how it affects so many people. So you can just go ahead and start wherever you'd like to about your personal story.
Yeah, so every time I share this story, it always gives me chills. So excuse me for the chills. So my best friend, her name was Sabrina, and we've been friends since high school, our senior year. So it would have been, let's see, I'm almost 28, so it would have been 10 years now. And she was one of my friends where you feel like in your early 20s, you start having kids, but then you have your friends who are not. She was one of the friends that I depended on with my motherhood journey, and someone that I could relate to in that season of our life. So when I lost her, I felt like I lost that one resource, that one friend that had it, had my back 100%. Even though I had other mommy friends, growing through my journey in motherhood, I started making more mommy friends. Yeah. But she was that one because, we had a history. Yeah. Unfortunately, she struggled silently. I never knew about her postpartum depression. She had her baby actually at 29 weeks. And that's when I started noticing some of the symptoms. But, I never thought that she was susuicidal. And
you did notice some changes, but nothing too outright noticeable.
Yeah, I mean, growing up, she's had a little bit of depression. Just knowing her in those 10 years, she's had her moments, but never has she ever confronted it with me or any of our friends. So when I found out of her passing, I think the first thing naturally, you think she was only 26, so you think, oh my gosh, there had been an accident, right? But for some reason, I instantly thought, no, she must have, committed suicide, unfortunately. And unfortunately, I was correct. But yeah, it's been a rough year, very rough year. And it'll be 1 year this March 1st. So yeah, and after I had my second daughter, it was only a few weeks before I said my final goodbyes to my best friend. And I think going through that grieving process, and then I was also moving in between homes, moving to a bigger home for my second daughter, of course. And going through a move, going through grieving kind of instantly pushed me into postpartum depression myself. Right. I don't know if that was just my grief talking or if it was certainly depression, or maybe it was both. I became suicidal, and for 6 to 8 months of my second-born's life, I wasn't there. I was in the darkness. I was grieving. All I wanted was Sabrina. Yeah. And it was tough. So, thank you. But long story short, I was in the hospital. My last suicide attempt involved a gun, and I drove off to a park. I called a friend. My friend was, of course, concerned. So she called the police. The police came to see me and took me to the hospital. Fortunately, I was not admitted on a legal hold. Well, I mean, I was on a hold for that few hours, but they did an evaluation and I was cleared. But going through that, I don't know if any of our listeners have been through that. Maybe they might have, but it was scary. You're pretty much in that room all by yourself. And that was when I realized, and it was God spoke to me, or even maybe Sabrina, who I call my guardian angel. And she said that I needed to stay here on earth to spread awareness. So I quit my day job, which was absolutely scary. But, I had a supportive boss, and she said, this is a matter of life and death. If I had so much on my plate already, 2 girls, 2 under 2, a new house that nobody was maintaining. And I said, okay, the work had to go. And ever since then, I started my podcast. I've been so much happier. I'm still on antidepressants, but I certainly haven't had to take my anxiety medications. So yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sorry that it got so bad.
Thank you.
It happened relatively quickly.
Yes, it did. I mean, at first I kind of ignored it, I think. I did go get help. I saw a therapist, and my therapist knew, and she said, you've got to come see me every week. And of course, stubborn me, who was concerned about work and not being at work, I said, I can't afford it. And then, of course, until it got so bad to where she's like, you need to see a psychiatrist. So she sent me over there, and here I am. So, yeah.
Okay, good. So you feel like you're getting better?
Yes. Mm-hmm. I mean, it took a while. Not that we're trying to give people medical advice, but medications will take a while to kick in. And I've told my therapist, we don't know if my change in mood was due to the medication or due to my change in the environment or both. So that's why I'm still on it, but I don't recommend getting off of it without your doctor's permission.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's something to be really careful about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's often hard to know what exactly is helping. It's usually more than one thing. It's multiple avenues of things at the same time can be very helpful. A lot of people, I think, want to know, well, what actually helped. Mm-hmm. But, you're better. You're feeling better. Mm-hmm. And that is really important.
Yep.
So I'm glad you're safe now.
Yes, me too. I'm glad I'm still here to spread the word. So...
Yeah, so it sounds like, a lot of people, not everybody, but a good number of people who go through something that deep and transformative and scary go on to be advocates and spread awareness because it's such a profound experience. And really something that takes most people by surprise. And so that's what you've done. You've taken your experience and turned it into a passion, getting the word out, and sounds like doing a lot of work to try and prevent other mothers from going through what your friend went through and from what you went through.
Yes, absolutely. I always say I couldn't have saved her, but I could save another mom, and that'll make all the difference. So, I mean, I wish she was still here, but
Of course. Yeah. So it sounds like the effects of losing her were pretty deep and profound and are lasting now.
Mm-hmm. They do, yeah.
And have you seen that it affects other people? What have you seen as a result of?
Yeah. Whew. That sent chills down my spine. Sorry. But it affected, she left behind, she was only 26. She left behind her 2 daughters, a husband, a mother, a dad, and a sister, and multiple aunts, uncles, and cousins. And it affected all of us in a different way. It's different when you lose a sister versus a daughter versus a friend or a wife, And I think for me, we've built a bond, all of us. We are a family now, I think. And one of her aunts, I call her my aunt because this past year, we had to hold on to each other. And although that we are all going through different grieving processes, we all had to just hold on to each other. And it was hard. I might cry here, I'm sorry, but in my darkness, I felt guilty going to her mother, her grandmother, her sister to talk to them because, I kind of felt like, who am I? I just lost a friend. She just lost a daughter, And that's not the case. We all built a family and a bond because we all lost Sabrina. It doesn't matter what type and how so, but we all lost her. So, yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
That's very, very intense. I think on some level why I'm so grateful for you for sharing Sabrina's story
thanks.
and your story is that, moms who, and you can speak to this, I'm sure, moms who are in that darkness of suicidal thoughts are often thinking that it could range from anything to just wanting to end their suffering, to feeling like a burden on other people, to thinking that they're horrible mothers, and any number of things like that. And all of those thoughts are not true, but they feel so true. And you can't speak to Sabrina's experience in that way. But for other moms who are listening and who are suffering, and other healthcare providers who are listening and trying to understand how this happens, it's a very internal process. Is that what you experienced?
Absolutely. You get a lot, and to moms who are having those suicidal thoughts, you get a lot of those, your family or your friends, and they say, how could you do this to your family? That's what I got. And my answer is, I was in the dark, and you can't see anything. I've got 2 girls myself, and they're 2 under 2. And of course, when you're depressed, when you're going through this, of course you love your kids. Of course you love your husband, right? But when you're going through this, all you focus on is that pain, and you want to do anything to get rid of that pain. So
it doesn't seem like other avenues don't seem possible. Like getting help doesn't seem possible.
Yes, yeah. You feel like you'll never get out of it, but you will. So
right, and that's also the message that we can come to, that I think would be great for you to share with other people from what you've seen and through your podcast in just a little bit. So the impact has been pretty wide of losing Sabrina, and still is. Yeah, and it will be for some time. So what are you talking about on your podcast with the moms that you interview?
Yeah, so definitely anyone who's gone through postpartum depression. I have on there anyone, pretty much, I talk to all sorts of moms, to moms who struggle with infertility, moms who struggled with trying to think, finding themselves, finding their identity. My goal is to build a sisterhood of mothers, because I think that, we're in 2017, we're covered in social media, right? And all of us judge ourselves as moms. Either we're being judged on the internet, or being judged by how we can't breastfeed, or we don't do this, we don't do that. And my goal in my show is to share everyone's mother stories and let our listeners know that they're not alone, and we all struggle. We all have our struggles, and we all have our joys. And that's what my goal is, to spread awareness and to make moms feel that no one is better than the other, for sure.
Yeah, that's true. We all have our own paths to motherhood and through this transition. And, there's such power in telling your story and hearing other people's story. What kind of response have you had to the podcast?
Oh my gosh, it's been amazing and kind of breathtaking, I guess you could say. But I've got a lot of moms who are like, you've inspired me to do this. And a lot of business moms, because I talk to entrepreneurs, because that's usually where I find them, in entrepreneur sites. But they said, you've made me want to change my business, change direction in my businesses, or you've made me see the light. And it's funny, because if you told me that 10 years ago, I would have been like, I'm not that type of person. I'm not an inspirer. And I feel like Sabrina made me into that person. And it's kind of hard to believe. I mean, doing this podcast was never really my set plan. When you go to high school, you figure out a plan for yourself. Right. Podcast was never in that list. So it's been amazing and just eye-opening. So
right. I mean, that speaks to the depth of how much you value this. Getting the word out and getting the stories out.
Yeah.
I was wondering if it would be important to know, were you in the entrepreneur world, or is that how you're connecting with mothers?
I am, but I never, so how I started this was I was on this group called Boss Moms. I don't know if you've heard of it, but there's a podcast on it, and then there's a Facebook group. And I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. That was my goal in life, so that's why I joined. But then this podcast came up, and one day I just said, hey, I'm going to do a podcast. Would anybody like to be on my show? And I was floored with the responses. So in the beginning, it was more entrepreneur women who shared their motherhood story. We don't really focus on the entrepreneur side until the end. But then I started getting responses from, PPD support groups and, just different, and then moms who are telling their friends about me and they're coming to me. So it's only been 3 months, and it's just crazy.
That's awesome. So just for our listeners to understand your journey and your path to getting to this point, certainly not everybody's going to start a podcast or, start an organization or do advocacy work, but some people will after going through their journey. But I think that's the kind of small details of people's story, or the details that people don't always tell, are important for other moms to understand. Okay, so what was your context in your path, prior to even Sabrina committing suicide or you having your own experience? What were you doing?
Yeah. Well, it's a funny story, actually. But, Sabrina and I have known each other since high school. And after high school, I was always trying to find my journey, my passion, my calling, my vocation. And I went to college. I thought I was going to be a nurse, so I took some courses there, changed my major, thought I was going to be a graphic designer. What else? Therapist. I thought I was going to be a therapist. And then my last one was teaching. It all didn't work out. In the midst of all that, I became a mother. And my last previous job that I quit was an accounting job where my husband worked. And really, I loved the job, but I think it was just more of me settling. I was just like, okay, well, I guess I'm just a mom and I have to work to pay the bills, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where I was. And I lost. Then in the midst of losing Sabrina, I was grieving and all that, and I just couldn't do it. I couldn't handle being at work and having kids at the same time.
Right. So, I think I'm glad you're talking about this.
Yeah.
And because in terms of the work that I do as a therapist, I see a lot of moms who struggle with this transition, and specifically the working part. Some moms who know that they have to go back to work maybe, or don't like their jobs, or their job isn't a good fit for them. It can add a lot of stress to the transition to motherhood. If you're feeling this profound changes that sometimes motherhood can bring, this deeper kind of understanding of yourself in the world, and then thinking to going back to a job that's just, just for paying the bills, it can be really, really stressful. So it sounds like from your experience that you went through, that having that context, that kind of difficult job, was maybe part of what made things.
I think so. Yeah. Worse. I think so. I don't know if it wasn't the job itself. The job was easy. Right. And it was a desk job, right? But it was an hour away from my home. After picking up the kids, we didn't come home until 7 o'clock at night. Yeah. And foods weren't prepared. Laundry wasn't done. Right. Every morning we were scrambling. Okay, what is the kids going to wear? What am I going to wear? I don't have any clothes to wear. And that was so stressful. I feel like in society, we put this pressure on moms to be the working mom, be the perfect working mom as if you didn't have kids, and being the perfect housewife as if you didn't have a job. Right? And that's something that I spread the message, or I advocate about also, is that we need to learn to stop putting that pressure on us, It's your choice. Yeah. And I felt like just working from home has been a changer for me. I've made a 180. I'm so much happier. I'm present with my children, and I get to be the mom that I want to be. And that's being with my kids. So,
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean,
Yeah.
you just listed so many things that are stressful. Just a commute, an hour
Yeah.
commute, and
Oh, yeah.
then not having the energy or the time to take care of your home. And at that point, when you're so tired, you don't even want to. That's a lot of stuff, and you are already going through something so difficult.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, you had quite a bit of stress on you.
Yes.
I mean, just all for the moms who are listening, I think it's kind of a good thing to consider too, is like, what are the things that are stressing you out or that are stressful or that might become more stressful once you're pregnant or once you have a baby. It's so hard to know until the baby's there.
Yes. Yeah.
But, it can help to just look ahead a little and see what changes you can make.
Yeah.
Reduce your level of stress.
Yeah, I think before having kids, I've always had anxiety. I struggled a little bit of depression when I was in my teens. And if I could go back and realize how intense my anxiety is, I would maybe plan out my motherhood journey a little differently. But I never thought that. I mean, of course, my second child was a blessing, but it wasn't the plan to have them 16 months apart.
Right, yeah.
So there's just some things in motherhood where you can't plan. So.
Right. No, absolutely. It's coming at you at lightning speed sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're having really good, down-to-earth, realistic conversations about these difficult parts of the change to motherhood with the people on your podcast. Just so good because, right, these are the things we often are not talking about and we get blindsided by and then we sit in our homes in our caves by ourselves and wonder like, oh, everybody else seems to be able to do this and how come I can't?
Yep.
That's just really, really challenging.
Yeah. I think it's because of that social media again. Like you said, we're sitting in our caves and all we see is everyone's highlights. So then you're like, well, I wish my house was that clean, or I wish I could have the energy to read a book for my kids, and which we should, but the point is having that energy.
Well, yeah. Not even to mention all the sleep deprivation.
Oh, yes.
Big one. So through your podcast and your forums, through your website and on Facebook, what are the messages that you are really trying to get to mothers who are suffering?
Well, I think about this a lot because I'm on a lot of PPD support groups on Facebook, and I see there's that mom who posts that she's having a hard day and things like that. It's just for me, what I did was hold on to my faith. I prayed a lot. I mean, it's hard. Like, reach out to your support group, reach out to your tribe. I know when moms are in that darkness, it's hard to reach out. Yeah. So for me, that's why I'm here, is to shine that light for them. And for what you're doing, the same thing. And if you don't want to talk to a friend, listen to a podcast. That's what I did. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I don't know why. Maybe it's a part of that grieving process, but it was hard. I mean, even talking to my husband, who had no idea what to do with a wife who was suicidal and depressed. So all I had was a podcast. I just listened to someone else's words and someone else's encouragements, and it changed everything for me. Maybe not that 100% like that 180 that I made after making my own show, but it certainly helped me through that day. And you just got to take it one day at a time. So one thing that I got a lot when I was in my darkness was they said your depression is a choice. You wake up every morning and to choose to be happy. I get that, and I agree with it. However, and you're the doctor as well, but I feel like when you're struggling with PPD, it's hard too. It's a little bit of both. You're struggling with these hormones, these crazy hormones. And then you're also in the dark. So I feel like maybe if you try to choose to be happy, but then also understand that you're going through some hormonal changes as well. So kind of maybe meet in the middle. Gosh, therapy, meeting with therapists and meeting with a psychiatrist if you have to. Mm-hmm. So important. You have to have both, in my opinion. I feel like you have to have both. You can't just have one or the other, depending on how bad the depression is. So. Right. Yeah, right. That's my message.
Yeah, getting them some kind of good on the ground ideas of things to hold on to and things to do and to look into for healing, really, and for hope, stuff to hold on to. So you were mentioning that your husband's experience of you being suicidal and him being your husband. Can you give us a sense of what that was like for you and that was like for him and how you guys got through that?
Yeah. Well, in all honesty, it was hard. I mean, did it put a strain on our marriage? Yes. I do know that there's a lot of moms out there who maybe go through PPD and are afraid to tell her husband because, you know, you'd feel guilt or you feel like you're being a burden to your husband. And my husband and I, we've always been open about our communications. But for him, it was more like, how do I handle this? Because I never have been through this. He's never grieved like I have. Or, I mean, we all have our depressive state in life, right? It was never something this deep. So we just went through it. I mean, I don't think we've planned it. I don't think you ever plan this kind of thing, right? We had an open communication. We prayed. We prayed a lot. For me, I'm just going to be completely open here because I want to be and I want to spread that message. But I looked for people that could relate to me. And that was hard on my husband because, you know, that's your husband, that's your spouse. You should tell everything to them. So, but it's hard because he didn't relate. He couldn't relate. And that built anger in me. It was like, you know, you don't know how I feel. You don't know this pain inside that I'm feeling. You don't know what it's like to lose a friend this young. So, you know, I geared more finding friends who could relate, maybe even go to suicide. I found support groups of people who have lost people and family from suicide. I went there and that was okay. You know, I told my husband what I'm doing. I told him, look, I'm going to go this direction. I'm going to find someone who could relate. And he was okay with that. You know, of course, always make your husband that one top communication line. Always. And is he going to understand? Maybe not understand how you're feeling, but I feel like the husbands out there, please know that postpartum depression is a very real thing. And just be there for your wife. If she needs to seek therapy, let's do it. If she needs you there with her, go with her. But she's going to feel that there's going to be a time where she feels like she wants to talk to somebody who knows exactly how she feels because that's what I went through.
Yep, absolutely.
So, yeah, maybe even open up, help her find resources out there where there's suicide support groups, you know, whether you're feeling suicidal or you lost someone or postpartum depression support groups. Be that advocate for your wife, is what I'm trying to say. And if she needs your help finding those groups, help find it because it's out there.
Yeah. So, right. It's a difficult thing to understand, especially for people who've never been through it. And, you know, for men who will never go through it.
Yeah.
Don't have really anything to compare it to. Just physiologically, like they don't have periods. They don't understand those kind of hormonal changes, that even that. So it sounds like you guys worked through it and were able to come out of it together.
Yes, yes. I mean, it's scary I think it just changed our marriage. And I've told him before, I can't imagine how you felt pulling your wife down from a ceiling fan. Not to be sad, but I have tried to hang myself multiple times and he's pulled me down multiple times. So thank you. I feel like it has made our marriage stronger and our communication line stronger. But that's what we go through in marriage, right? We go through, what did we say in our vows? Through the good times and bad. So, and we're still together and we still hold on to our faith together. So,
you know, for couples or women or partners who are listening, that this is something that you can get through. It does take work. It does take a lot of patience. And sometimes, like you said, being that resource for your partner is really, or it's just something for them to hold on to. And that, you know, that what you went through from losing your friend and your own suicide attempts, that you got through that is awesome and amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, it takes a lot of, you know, grappling with very difficult stuff to make it through that. It really, really does. And I'm so glad that you did.
Thank you.
Yeah. And now that you're using your experience to spread awareness and hopefully help put out a hand to those other moms who are struggling. This is really, really hard stuff. It's difficult to talk about. It's difficult to hear for some people. A lot of people kind of, don't know what to do when they hear stuff like this.
Yes.
Which is why I think it's all that more important that you're sharing your story and you're sharing the stories of mothers, so it doesn't become this thing that's like, oh my gosh, can you believe?
Yes.
This is something that happens for moms, and the more we can, talk about it, and the more we can help moms and family members understand that you can get help and that you will feel better with the right help, and that you can go on to lead productive lives just like you're doing.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. So if people want to connect with you or be a guest or, follow you, you have a Facebook page and a website, Always With Me Podcast Facebook page.
Yep.
And Always With Me Podcast. And where can people find that?
Yeah, definitely. So you can find me on iTunes or Stitcher and just search Always With Me. And our website is alwayswithme.org. I am open to any type of guests. Of course, mom guests, because that's our topic, right? But yeah, it's funny when people are like, let me know if I'm a good fit for the show. And I'm like, of course you are. You're a mom. Of course you're a great fit. So I am an open book, and, let me know and enjoy the show. I hope that it lifts you up like it lifted me. So
awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on with us and sharing your story and helping so many other people now.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us today. If you or someone you know is having a hard time, help is available. Please look for resources for help at momandmind.com. Also, please subscribe and share this podcast. Together, we can support moms and families so that no one has to deal with this alone. Thank you for being a part of the Mom and Mind community.